We're going to take Sheila's website today, and we're going to start taking a look at the things that Sheila has in her website. And I was capturing her branding colors here. And I'm getting, it's a staged site, Robin, so it's not for public consumption. I'm getting ready to open it up here in just a second on the stage site. And if you're building websites, doing a stage site's a really good idea. It allows you to be able to do something that is not searchable in the public. That way you can make mistakes, try out ideas, do that kind of thing. And so that's where Sheila has her site hosted now, is on a stage site. So, which tells the public it's not for you to view right yet, but we're going to view it in the webinar. So that's where we're going to start. We'll start with Sheila's. We'll start with Sheila's website here, and there is something that looks like it is a code that's being picked up by the site. That's one of the things, the reason why you host a site prior to actually making it available to the public. I can't even read what's there. Anytime you have, the thing you have to remember, a visual thing that you have to remember that can help you, and this is something that's popped up in Sheila's code as the site loads. So please ignore this. This is not a mistake that Sheila made. This is something that needs to be corrected when the website loads. But one of the things that you need to, and I'm telling you this because I want you to understand, one of the things that happens, and we'll see this later in her website, one of the things that your eye has to do is it looks for that point of contrast. And so when you have black on blue like that, there's no line at the edge of the letter. There's no clear contrast between the edge of the letter and the background. So it makes it really, really hard to read. That's the reason why I tell you that when you put text on top of an image, what you should do is you should put something in between those, so that it kind of helps to create that mark of demarcation that allows your eye to be able to focus on the letter itself. And so the better that we understand that, the easier it is to do that. This is a classic example of that. Don't ever put blue on black or black on blue is what we have in this case. But we have another example kind of like that makes that difficult. There is a shadow around these letters. There's a shadow around these letters, and that shadow in this particular case is making that edge of demarcation difficult to see. So my suggestion is to remove the shadow from this. It does make it look blurry, and the older that you are, the blurrier that becomes. And so those of us who are on that side of the timeline are looking at this going, that looks pretty blurry to me. And again, the reason for that is that what your eye's looking for is that edge of contrast. And without that edge of contrast, then the shadow on the letters doesn't enhance the look, it takes away from it. So Sheila, are you taking notes of that? The better we understand, and you say, what does that have to do with Usign? It has everything to do with Usign, because, and again, it goes back to what I have you put a panel over the top of an image so that you can put text on top of that. You're trying to create that edge, that sharp edge that allows your eye to be able to focus. Or if you're trying to take that out of focus, the way you do that is you blur that edge. Does that make sense to everybody? Again, we want to make this as easy for the other person to be able to see. And some of us are at that point where some of our eyesight is fading just a little bit, and for whatever reason it is. And when that's going on, it's really important that if that's our market, if that's the people that we're trying to reach, that we make it really easy for them. Let me ask you this. How many of you have taken your phone or your tablet or a smart device of some kind, brought up a website and took one look at that and went, I can't read this, and you close it? How many of you have done that? So the question is, how many people, the person who owns that website, how many people are they turning away because they've done something that does not help the reader? We do this for the advantage of the reader. Don, I totally agree with you. The Reader's Digest condenses the version and it creates big text. I mean, most of us grew up with the Reader's Digest, and that's literally the best example that we have. Larger print, less text. I listened, this doesn't have anything to do with Uzyme, but it has everything to do with what we're doing here with creating websites. I listened to a publishing platform webinar over the weekend, and one of the things I discovered on that is that the constant complaint in publishing is that the print's too small to read. So given that fact, wouldn't it be in our best interest to make things easy to read? So we want to make this really easy to read. So the shadow on the outside of this text distracts rather than attracts. And we want to make sure that everything that we do is attracting the reader, not distracting them. And so this is the first thing that I noticed, aside from this, which Shelia had no control over whatsoever, is this right here. And that is that we don't have that clear distinction. How's the shadow down here not causing the issue? It's because the white on blue is a lot easier in the color spectrum than this is. And it's larger letters. But notice down here, this is smaller letters, no shadow. This is larger letters up here, but the contrast is not as sharp. All right, does that make sense to everybody? Now, the next thing is keep this in mind. Keep this in mind as you look at this. How many people are going to view this on their laptop as opposed to how many people are going to view it on a mobile device? And that's always something that you need to take into careful consideration. How many people are going to see this on a laptop versus how many people are going to see it on a mobile device? And because of that, you want to take a careful look at how your content lays out. And you want to have, I always try to have multiple devices. And if I don't have multiple devices, for example, I don't know what an Android is. I'm saying that jokingly and tongue in cheek, but all of my devices all begin with the letter I. And so because all of my devices begin with the letter I can test that on an iPhone 6, I can test it on an iPhone 7, I can test it on an iPhone 11. I have the ability to be able to see that on a variety of mobile devices, but because I keep all my past phones. I do that for that reason. They still function, and I can attach them to my internet in my house, and I can view them on those various devices. And interestingly enough, there's a slight difference from one to the other. And so you always want to make sure that you know what that is and you don't get caught by surprise. The other thing to keep in mind is that this button almost disappears. It almost disappears. So not only do I need to know what this is going to look like on a mobile device, but I also need to know how this is going to appear no matter where it's at. Is this going to be big enough to get the attention that it needs? Now, my response is no, it's not big enough to get the attention that it needs. It's not. And so I would recommend making this larger. How many of you think that that button should be larger and the text should be larger? Again, we're breaking this down so that it might be helpful to Sheila. I told her that this would be the day that we're going to have to, that we kind of shake it out. And so shaking it out, you discover some things in the process. Again, this is another one of those things that you need to take a look at. You have an empowering message. This should probably all be one line. And again, it's kind of, and I would be a little curious as to where the fold breaks without this message up here at the top. I'm not sure I agree with the less white space, but I would definitely put this. So this part of the message, that you have an empowering message, is a single line. Whatever it takes to do that, even at the sacrifice of some other things. And so I would make that, and what that does then, it brings everything up, and it makes that's a good question, Don. I don't have the answer to that, but if I make this one line, then I'm going to bring all of this text up into one space, and that's going to help for everything that's above the fold. Now, the above the fold thing loses its magic when we're talking about a mobile device. Don's asked the question, would this image right here, would that image be, would that be visible on a mobile device? The answer to that question is, I don't know. You'd have to test, again, one of those things that you would have to test and find out. If you get anything at all from me, that is the importance of testing. In fact, I'm going to give you something in just a little bit. I'm going to give you access to something in just a little bit that'll help you from a testing standpoint, because you need to test everything. I mean, you literally need to test everything. And if you're not testing everything, then you are you're literally wasting your time. Because what happens is you get inside your own head, and you do this to your own satisfaction, and then the public looks at it and goes, no, that's not going to be a good idea. Always an issue with the reflow of the text, and that's the reason why I say you have to test everything. And I actually have a team of testers that can test it on Android, so that's what I use them for. Okay. Now, that's just as we look at this introductory page, my very first line of text, the very first thing I see is distracting because of the shadow. And so you have to think carefully, how well is this contrast between this orange and the blue going to look? And you can see it right here. It's not bad. Okay. Hey, Wayne, glad to have you. And so without the shadow, this looks much better. There's a much sharper contrast between the edge and the blue of the background. And the fact that this is a gradient going this direction means that the lighter colored text going this direction is going to compete more. Excuse me. It's going to compete more with the background. Does that make sense to everyone? And it could be to the point where on a mobile device, it would compete too much. All right, good. Now we're going to scroll down. My assumption is all that was intended to be above the fold because we have this little symbol right here. So we'll take that as above the fold. So everybody know what we're talking about when I say above the fold? That's a really old web development term, but I want to make sure that you understand what we're talking about. That's the thing that people see without having to scroll. It is this section right here that people see when the site opens up without them having to scroll. Okay? Now, when I scroll down, because that's the next thing to do, I like the shadow around this box right here. The shadow around the box works really good. Okay, I like the shadow right here. I do. This works really well. Works really well. We got a little quotation mark up here in this symbol here. Okay. I'm reading Don's comments, his old school, referring to the days of old when we used paper to convey news. Actually, Don, yesterday I was doing a training session with somebody, and I have a pair of scissors in my hand referring to where the term cut and paste came from, because I used to work in a printing office. The best lesson I ever learned in my life was learning with a pair of scissors in a printing office about getting your text right before you're ready to lay it out. And because one mistake and you've got to cut and paste and repaste the entire page back in the old days. All right, so this looks really good. Here's I'll give you a fairly simple rule about images here, because this is a pretty tiny image. Michelle's asked that question. I want the person's face to be about, and this is a hard rule to create, but about the size of a dime, if that makes any sense at all. The circle here is the size of a dime, but her face is not. Yeah, I totally agree, Robin. The box right here describes the journey really well. And I really, really like the way she's done this. I like the fact that this stands out because of the shadow that was put around it, because the nickel's too big. It's just easy to see the size of a dime. And so that's the reason why I picked a dime. No numerical value associated with that. It just seems to be a pretty good rule. It's an old newspaper rule, and that was that we would literally take a dime and lay it over the pictures that we were going to include in the newspaper. Go back to my conversation with Don earlier, and make sure that the person's face was visible. So that's where it came from. A little harder to do that on digital devices, but the same rule still kind of applies. All right, this works really well. This question right here, and either way, either putting this in a paragraph as 3 questions or putting that as 3 bullet points doesn't make any difference. I think it accomplishes the same purpose. Has all the right terminology coming from her worksheets. The word overwhelmed, hectic schedule, uncertainty, inundated, tech, those were all terms that were really important in her worksheets. And so she's taken those and incorporated them into the language on her website. Does everybody understand why those worksheets become so important? Because without it, then you're trying to figure out what you're going to put where. And if you already have the worksheets done, then it's pretty easy for you to take the content from those worksheets and put them here. The same thing is true if you're working with a client. Let's take the client's worksheet, give the client a worksheet. What do you want to accomplish with your business? Remember, the secret to the success of any system is that you're creating something for yourself which will be identical to what you're going to create for your client. Does that make sense? That way the system becomes second nature to you. You're creating it for yourself so that then you turn around and create that for your customer. Now, keeping that in mind, this is not a good idea right here, this shadow around the outside of this, because the first thing the client looks at and goes, I don't want that. The last thing you want a client to do is to take a look at your website and go, but that's not what I want. Instead, it should be invisible to them. Okay? You understand what I mean when I say invisible? Technology should always be invisible. That means it happens without much thought. Another word that was on our worksheet was the word leverage. This is good. Your success partner. We're carrying that same theme here, and it's being carried out throughout the entire website. Right? What about this button? What do you see about that button? It's small and it does have a lot of text. So let's help Sheila with it. It's small and it has a lot of text. I have a rule that I practice in my website and my websites, my sales pages, my sales funnels, and everything else that I do for clients. And that is that my button text is 22 pixels. I don't care what the rest of the I don't care what else is going on the page. My button text is always going to be 22 pixels. Any questions or comments about that? I guess not. But 22 pixels makes it really easy to read. It's large enough that you can that you can see it. It will have to be resized for a mobile device, obviously. The last thing you want this to look like is a box the same size as this over here. But because a mobile device will squish that. And so what you might do, yeah, 22 pixels, not, because I typically write all the rest of the text in 18. I want to make it really easy for people to read regardless of what device that you're on. So what you might do is to take a chunk of this and put it in a text line right here. Are y'all seeing where I'm pointing at? Right above the button, put it in a text line right above the button with an ellipsis at the end of that, which would point them to the button. Rob said 22 is good. Let me explain to you the reason why I do that. I don't ever have to think about it. Every time I create a button, I know I have to set the button text to 22 points. Mike, that's a really good point. And I'm gonna talk about how to test that at the end of today's conversation. Okay? Because there's a way to test that and get immediate feedback, and we'll talk about that. All right. Button talk. But what I would probably do would be to play off of this, make this a subheading, make a portion of this a subheading, and be able to point that. And I'm going to take a private conversation that's taking place here because I think it's important that I mentioned this. The hardest thing to do is to look at your own work and examine it. And this is hard because we're saying what we like and don't like. And that's really, really difficult. It's challenging. And our hats off to Shelia for allowing us the privilege of being able to do this because it's a little brutal. And I don't mean to be brutal. And I don't want to, I'm not going to let anybody else be brutal in the process. We're going to make suggestions. That's all we're going to do. We're not going to find fault. That's not what we're going to do. And that's not what was happening in the conversation. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But I think it's really important that we make that we provide feedback for her. And we provide feedback in a way that works really well and is done in a positive note. I'm going to give you some clues about how to do that in just a little bit. I'm saving a little bit of time at the end for that. Okay. All right. Now, this next section, I love this. The problem is that every time I look at this sentence right here, because again, I'm a little older than Sheila's market, but I keep thinking I've got something in my eye. That shadow. And so just because, and I really like this, I like it, but I slid it over and had my wife look at it and she goes, that's hard to read. And my wife has great vision compared to mine. So it was just one of those things to think about. Does this enhance this message or does it detract from it? Because I'm still trying to focus my eyes. And I feel like my eyes are doing a jungle gym. I agree with what M's saying. You can use that shadow by bringing it in a little closer. It's just, I'm still, the longer I look at this, the harder I'm trying to focus. And I agree with what Don says. The text by itself pops, even if you remove the shadow. Remember, we talked about this last week. The trend now is for things to be simpler. And as we trend towards simplicity, which you're seeing everywhere, you're seeing it in logos, you're seeing it in advertisements, you're seeing it everywhere. It's important that we try to stay with that trend. Okay, really hard to do that. I like the use of this blue with this black background. Looks really good. This is really good right here, but it doesn't belong. Why doesn't it belong on her homepage? I mean, this is a great accolade. It's wonderful. It's great testimony. But it's not on the journey. You can do that. There's plenty of places to do that, but it's not on the journey. And this takes this person right here in a totally different direction. Regardless of whether it is an active, and it's not, but regardless of whether it is an active button or not, this actually takes off in a different direction, and doesn't. There's nothing wrong with the testimony. This is a distraction, and I want to have a singular focus. I want to pick up the hero on the journey at the point of their pain. I want to pick them up at the point of their pain. This actually, and we're getting a couple of comments here that the testimonials should be short and sweet, and I totally agree with that. They should be one paragraph, no more than 3 sentences. This belongs on the About Shelia page more than on this page here about testimonials. Again, it's my opinion. That's all it is an opinion. But but this is not helping the hero on their journey. It helps underscore the guide or the helper on the journey, but it's not helping the person who finds the site looking for the help. We've met the hero on the journey at the point of their pain. Be careful that this doesn't become a distraction. And again, we want to keep the testimonials really short. Like this. That's amazing. Right? Yeah, the only reason why I bring it up has nothing to do with the politic, has everything to do with the hero on the journey, because they're the only person that matters. Thank you, Michelle. That's correct. That they're the only person that matters. These are great. Short, easy, amazing pictures. I love the pictures with it. I wouldn't use the video. The video's fine. I would probably put the video on the About page. Everybody understand? Because we have a contrast. I like this. This works. This works. This is different. Makes sense? Is this the right place for testimonies? Think about the flow here. Is this the right place for testimonies? What are we doing? We're taking them on a trip, right? I listened to the most amazing video breaking down an old Gordon Lightfoot song. And the question was asked, why are Gordon Lightfoot songs so magical? And it's 20 minutes on a song that's less than 3 minutes long. And the thing that grabbed me as a writer about that video was that there is the notes, and then the production man said he had fill notes. And I went, that's exactly what we do when we write copy. This is the notes that make up the song. It's the fill notes. We're taking that hero on a journey, but we want to keep them, if you'll pardon the expression, we want to keep them entertained along the way. We want to put the fill notes in there so that it accomplishes the factor of being magical. And that was what that video was all about. I plan to do a whole training wrapped around that video. That was just amazing. I'm not going to do it here, but I'll do it someplace, because this is what we want to do. here's this, or you're overwhelmed, then let me introduce you to Shelia. This is what other people say about Shelia. And the two testimonies are amazing. The other two things probably belong on the about page. Okay. The next thing is we're picking up. Are you prepared for that future, which is where the journey's going, correct? So we pick them up on that journey. We introduce them to Shelia. Now we take them the next step. Now we're going to have the hero and Shelia walk together on the journey. Everybody with me? We're going to have Shelia and the hero walk together on the journey. And that's what we're going to do next. Are you prepared for your future? That might be reworded a little bit so that it literally implies that we're going to do this together. We've got a testimony up here. This is what other people say about Shelia. Carry that, create the fill notes, carry that right to the next line in the song, and it will be amazing. We're going to keep them walking. Now, what's it like for them to walk together? And she does a really good job of that. Imagine waking up in the morning. What she's doing, she's casting that out into the future and saying, this is what your future can look like. Shelia and I might discuss the order of these, but the fact that they're here is awesome. See how the orange kind of is fading just a little bit into the background though? Yeah, that's what I was just saying, Don. This is kind of washing out. And so you might want to consider making these boxes a little bit darker in the process. I do like the fact that you've got them together over here. This looks really good. I mean, this does a great job of taking that person on their journey from where they're at. We picked them up at their point of pain. We introduced them to the guide, and now we're going to take them on the next step. Yeah, I say Shelia and I will probably discuss the order of this, but the fact that they're here is really important. She's done a great job of putting them together, okay? It is great use of visual and text, and just using these as headlines without trying to explain, perfect, 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 perfect. Next. Great logo. Shelia, your success partner. We're carrying that theme through here. And then we have here's is here to show you the way. That comes out a little bit awkward. Saying them out loud always makes a big difference, okay? Now, the other thing that you're getting in the feedback of this is that you're getting a variety of people looking at this from a variety of screen experiences. And the comment is the shadow's still a little distracting. I'm not a big fan of shadows. And if you'll notice that there's a trend to flat design rather than depth of design. And so kind of things are trending in that flatter design element. And so I would follow the trends rather than the past. Now, this needs a different graphic, obviously, but that's okay. I mean, that's an easy thing to do. This needs a slightly different graphic. That would be helpful. Okay. Good use of contrast. Good use of gradient here. I like the gradient in the middle of this. It does help this to kind of stand out. Actually helps all of it to stand out. Works really well. Again, another one of those cases where I think the shadow becomes a distraction, because again, I'm trying hard to focus, and I can't tell if I'm out of focus or if that's intended to be that way. My eyes shouldn't have to do gymnastics. Okay, and this should probably be at least twice this size. And I would change the word "this" to "we." How do we work? We're always too wordy, by the way. There's an old story that one of the old time authors said, "Brevity, brevity, brevity. If I had enough time, I would have just used one brevity." Did anybody get that joke? That's really funny, and it's so true. We spend way too much time writing way too much stuff because the hardest work is cutting it down. So it's hard. I have to do it all the time. I can start out with a 1,000-word article and have it down to 400 and haven't changed a thing. Em, you're too funny. Nice use of color, nice use of the graphic element here. Good way to pop this over. This is only here to be a distraction, and that's really good. Yeah, the 7 pages down to 7 sentences is it's an exercise. It's a tough one. It's the, and I could talk about that forever, and I'm not going to. But but this is good. This works really well. But what's happening here? What has happened here is that Shelia went from introducing what the future is going to look like to defining the solution. And this may be too early in the process and too early in the experience for the person who arrives on the website. Everybody understand that? There are places that can do this heavy lifting, but it probably wouldn't be on the homepage. If they're interested in what the solution looks like, get them to click a button. Get them to click a button. And that will help. I think sometimes we introduce the solution too fast. There are several levels of awareness. One of the levels of awareness is that the person knows that they have a problem. They know you. They know that you have the potential of a solution, so you give it to them. When that's the level of awareness, then you approach that very differently than you do the person who doesn't know who you are, isn't aware of the fact they have a problem. So I've got to use some trigger words like overwhelmed and that kind of thing, which we saw earlier in the page. And so I approach them differently. The person who knows that they have a problem but doesn't know you, then we approach that a little bit differently. So we have to be aware of that. That's the reason why those early worksheets are so important. And it's the reason why we want to use other tools besides just the homepage on your website to accomplish some of those other things. All right. Okay, something happened here. And this is one of those things, and I apologize for this, but this makes me want to fall out of my chair. This is covering up something that when I've looked at the other pages, I'm expecting, and it's gone. I think there's something supposed to be at the bottom of this, and it's not there, and it's covered up. And literally, that becomes a major distraction for me. Understand? Now, Kat's saying there's too many buttons, and so it appears to be pushy. The only reason why it appears to be pushy, and there's kind of a standard rule, 3 buttons is kind of right. But the reason why it's too pushy is because you're offering a button for every solution, and you have multiple solutions. So that really belongs on what page? What page does that belong on? Somebody help me with that. On the services page, sales or services page. That's where it belongs. Because once you get to the sales and services page, they've already said, yes, I'm interested in this. Okay. And this is what I need. And so that sales and services page should be able to then redirect them to, do I need this solution? Do I need this solution? Do I need this solution? We're not going to discuss whether that's really what's happening there, but that takes the place of those buttons. And then you literally have a landing page that accomplishes that heavy lifting. Yeah, see, we talked about this, and thank you, Robin, for pointing that out. We talked about this by contrast with the website that I built for myself while we went through this process. I had one goal. My one goal was to get them to schedule an appointment. That was my one goal. I wanted to get them to schedule an appointment. And if they would schedule an appointment, then it was easy. And that was my single conversion. My most wanted response was to get them to schedule an appointment. And I offer something in that appointment that I think has value. And so my one goal is to get them to schedule an appointment. So all my buttons direct to that. If it's not mobile friendly, Rob, nobody's going to pay attention to it at all. See, I don't know that they're ready to make, again, we have to have that awareness situation. They may not be aware of the fact that they have an appointment or have a problem, but they need to discuss it. They may not be aware of who I am. They may know they have a problem. They may not know who I am. Well, the best way to find out is that we talk. That's the best way. So I have to take them through that process. And M says, I offer multiple services, but my only goal is to get them to set an appointment. I totally agree with that. That is the best approach that you can take, is to have a single point of conversion and allow the other pages to do the work that they're intended to do. Okay? Because I'm not going to make a decision based upon this little tiny paragraph right here. I'm just not. Yeah, Sheila, that was just in response to the question about ladder pages not being, do they have to be mobile friendly? Absolutely. Michelle's asked an interesting question about overcomplicating a simple website. Yeah, we do that. We really overcomplicate a simple website. We just need to walk people. Remember, the honor journey, we met them at the point of pain. That's where we're going to have our discussion at. Okay. If they already are aware of who I am, what the solution is, the fact that they have a problem and they're ready to make a decision, I'm going to point them in a completely different direction. That's not going to be done by my homepage. That's going to be done by my directing that, either my email list or something to that effect. Yeah, that's what I'm just saying, Em, is that the trend now is to have have a library of pages that accomplish different purposes, and then you have a single page that accomplishes a variety of purposes. Or I'm sorry, you have a single page that accomplishes a single purpose instead of having a website with drop down menus and all that stuff that gets complicated, gets lost on a mobile device, that kind of a thing. So you want to make sure that you follow the trends of what's happening, because if you're competing with somebody else in that same space that is exactly what people are seeing everywhere else, and you're not there, then you have an issue. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's a great rundown of Sheila's site. A little tough, a little bit of work to do. Some things that Shelia can do. She really has the structure to make this work. Okay. She just needs to change where she places the solutions a little bit. I totally agree, Michelle. Great job. Thank you for being brave. Appreciate your opportunity to do that.